years, until she retired, moved to Raleigh, married the love of her life, my Papa Sam, in 1996. When my mom moved to Raleigh, she became active. She joined her local chapter. She was a Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. She joined her church. She even was recognized as Volunteer of the Year in her community for the work that she did. And you watch this woman, she was active in the prisons, in the women's prisons. She would actually transport prisoners to different places on their day passes. And then she would work with them when they got out to mentor as they're in their release. Yes, Effie Merritt was an active woman and a woman of great faith. But you see, in 2007, and why do I remember the exact moment? Because that is the year that I married my husband. And my mom's health began to fail. And I couldn't understand why she couldn't remember, Mom, we having the bridal shower, we doing this, we doing that. And the things that I wish I had known and was aware of, because I would challenge her. I was like, Mom, I just told you that. Mothers and daughters, I'm my only child, right? And I would say, what, why you don't remember that? Didn't you do such a, and that was my first mistake, is really not understanding. And my family, we didn't know until she was diagnosed. And I think she came to stay with us, and she finally shared the diagnosis. Of course, I cried. Of course, she tried to keep up by remember she was doing crossword puzzles and different things, which I think I'm addicted to them now, but that's we'll talk about that later. I probably, it's a whole thing, right? But it's the things that I wish I knew. Don't tell them they're wrong. Don't argue with them. Don't ask if they remember stuff. And these are things, that are out there now that I feel 12 years ago, I just didn't know where to go. And don't bring up topics that upset them. Just try to be calm. We eventually learned. Well, my mom progressed, and finally we faced the decision to have to put her in a memory facility. One of the hardest decisions, and I'm speaking to caregivers here. It's a hard decision, but why did we make that decision? Because my Papa Sam, and he was elderly himself, and we could see it bringing him down to have to manage her care by himself. They were in Raleigh. I live here. I was caring for my mom's older sister. So I guess I also stand here just to say, don't feel guilty. There's an amount of guilt. We have caregivers in the room. If you have to go into a memory facility, you're going to visit her, your loved one. We were very careful in choosing that facility. Very careful. My husband and I took a trip down there to see that. So we did have to do this. It was a very hard decision to make. And you may be sitting here asking yourself, why am I standing here? Why am I sharing my story with you? Well, I'm sharing to remind you that families' hearts are being broken every day, having to live with the impact of the horrible disease. But you all can help us get closer to the cure by talking to your family members. Share your story. Don't be afraid. We're walking on October the 28th. If you can't walk, donate. If you go online, if you can't walk, just donate. Go look up the teams. Prince George's County, every other person, if Bishop was to say, how many in church on Sunday, right? Over 700, if he was to say, how many people are impacted by Alzheimer's? Probably every hand would go up. Our communities are being impacted. We have no idea why, but we are being impacted. We are stricken. It is in our communities, and we have to do something to help stop, to get closer to a cure. Am I right? Amen? My mom deserved a cure, but unfortunately there isn't one yet. But with your support for the Alzheimer's Association Walk, like I said, October 28th, to end the walks across the country to raise awareness and funds for Alzheimer's care, support, and research, one day we are going to find a cure. Amen? I just believe that. I believe that it's going to be, they carry the white, I think it's the white flower, for the cure, right? And so I want to see a sea of white for everyone that's been cured right? One year I carried, I think it was the yellow flower, and then the next year I had to go to the purple flower because my mom had passed. But I just want to stand here too for anyone that's caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's. There's hope. Number one, you will survive. We went through it for 12 years. I'm still standing. My mom has been called from labor to reward. I know she's in glory. And I just celebrate organizations like Alzheimer's and the Caregivers Association coming together to support you in your journey. But it is a journey. Stay strong, read the information, connect with other caregivers, and connect with those of us who have walked the journey before you. Is that good? I love you all so very much. And I hope that you will consider, again, organizing a team or supporting Alzheimer's through your donation, your time, and your effort. And thank you very much, Sister Tasha, for allowing me this opportunity to just share my story.
Thank you, First Lady Minister Tanya Twyman. What a powerful personal remarks. As she said, I'm sure everyone has a story in here, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're going through Alzheimer's, whether you're going through any type of disease. We all have a story. At this time, I would like to take a moment to announce that we have a representative from Congressman Glenn Ivey's office, Mark Hawk II, Staff Assistant, Internship Program Coordinator. He's here on behalf of Congressman Glenn Ivey. Would you like to come up and say a few words?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me today. I'm super excited to be here. And thank you, First Lady, for your words. I really appreciated it. And yes, we all do currently have a story. My Aunt Gloria, she's currently going through dementia. She just lost her husband, and so it has been very taxing on our family. And so just to be here, you all are doing this work, it shows that this cause is very important. I actually took a very important meeting this week with some community members, and they pitched an idea for a facility. And they just gave me some statistics and the background about how these diseases affect our communities. Black and brown people are mostly affected by these things. So it's good to see this room full of individuals to go out in our community and share the knowledge, like you said, donating, walking, whatever you can do, I appreciate it. And the Congressman is a big supporter of this issue and many that we deal with. So thank you for having me.
And please tell Congressman Glenn Ivey, thank you for sending her. Thank you so much. I would like to ask Sis Cassandra Larkins to come.
Thank you, Sister Tasha. And First Lady, I know what you were going through because I went through the same thing with my dad, and I wish I had known Ms. Morris at that time, but my sister and I just kind of went through it alone. But anyway, I'm not here to do that. I am here to introduce the 4 St. Stephen Baptist Church ministries that have worked together on this exciting event just to collaborate and put this together. The first ministry is Church Fit, Body and Soul, and the ministry leaders are Brother Calvin and Sister Michelle Andrews. And this ministry offers a health and wellness program designed to help individuals and families improve their health in a holistic way. The second ministry is my ministry, the Cancer Support Ministry. And we're here. And our mission is to provide support, comfort, and hope to those who have been diagnosed with cancer or are recovering, to their loved ones and their caregivers by uplifting them with prayer, sharing encouragement and personal testimonies of faith and survival, and offering comforting messages of hope and trust in the Word of God. The next ministry is the Minister Tanya Twyman's ministry, the women's ministry. And that mission, the mission is to educate, equip, and unite women by the aid of the Holy Spirit to spiritually position women to edify and witness to the lost, to promote personal relationships with Christ, and to exalt the Savior. And our fourth ministry is Tasha's ministry in Mercy House. I know you're in the house. And the mission is to demonstrate God's love by alleviating human needs and suffering in the community and beyond. And the ministry combats hunger, deprivation, and physical affliction with provision of food and clothing. So these are the 4 collaborating ministries. Let's give them all a hand.
Thank you, Sis Cassandra. So at this time, we are about to start this interactive conversation today. The reason why we're here at the Remember When Alzheimer's Dementia Caregivers, we would like this to be an interactive conversation. The presenters want to walk around, they want to meet, they want to greet, they want to hear your story today. So right now, I'd like to introduce Miss Patricia Morris and Mr. Stephen Morris, which is her husband. He's in the back at the Hands of Hope Caregivers Foundation table. I'm going to read just a snippet of Miss Patricia Morris' bio. She's a God-fearing, loving, caring, strong, selfless, and advocate for others. These are just some of the words that describe Miss Patricia Morris. Mrs. Morris started her higher education at Mary College in Bismarck, North Dakota, earning her bachelor's degree, having a passion for school and helping others. She then pursued and attained her master's degree from the Tulane University School of Social Work in New Orleans, Louisiana. She's an example of leadership, endurance, and prosperity with over 30 years of experience in her field of social work and mental health. Mrs. Morris, we welcome you here to St. Stephen's Baptist Church as one of our presenters today for Remember When, Alzheimer's, Dementia, and Caregivers. This is our first presenter. Also like to introduce Mr. Michael Smith. He's our community educator and support group leader, Alzheimer's Association National Capital Area. Mr. Smith is retired from Georgetown University, where he served over 20 years as director in the University Office of Institutional Diversity. He was responsible for conducting discrimination, harassment, retaliation, investigation, and monitoring the university's affirmative actions. He's also conducted training and workshops related to diversity, bias, anti-harassment. Given his tenure as a director of institutional and affirmative action, he served as deputy Title IX coordinator, faculty and staff from 2012 to 2020, provided support and resources to the students and staff and faculty. Mrs. Smith, we welcome you to St. Stephen's Baptist Church, to our Remember When Alzheimer's Dementia Caregivers, and you guys have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Delighted to be here again. Thanks, everyone. Let me do this, because we're going to talk about walking around. So I'm going to go first, and what I want to do is give you some statistics, talk about some information regarding health disparities, health care, talk about ourselves as a community of color. I'm curious this morning, how many of you know of anyone with Alzheimer's or dementia? A pretty significant number of folks. How many of you are actual caregivers? Wow, okay. Let me ask you this. How many of you think dementia and Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process? Excellent. I see but one hand. And that's wonderful, because we want to quickly, before I engage Ms. Morris in an actual conversation, ask her some questions and get her input, share some statistics with you. So number one, I want to talk about the distinction between Alzheimer's and dementia, because sometimes we hear them used interchangeably, or we think they're one and the same, and they're really not. Talk about the barriers and challenges within healthcare. Healthcare, they say white folk get the cold, we get the flu. And oftentimes, by the time we get diagnosed with the flu, it's pretty bad. All right? And then talk about health disparities, myths, stigmas, both within, again, externally, healthcare, also internally. Because sometimes, let's be honest with ourselves. As communities of color, we're like, nah, I don't want to deal with this. No, I don't need no help. No, I'm not going to put mama or daddy or granddad nowhere. I got this all myself. And the Lord's going to show me the way. And I don't want to offend anybody, but let me tell you a quick joke that somebody told me a number of years ago. Some poor gentleman was in a canoe going down the river. And all of a sudden, he lost his paddle. So he can't steer in the river. And he's like, Lord, help me. And he realizes the rapids getting faster and faster and faster. And he said, I'm going to face danger. Lord, help me. And the guy was at the side of the river, and he said, shh, here's the line. No. I don't need that. I don't need that. Lord, help me. And a tree branch went, shh, boom, fell right in front of the canoe. And the guy said, no, I don't need that. Helicopter came above. And the guy said, Lord, help me. No, get away from me. I need Lord's help. And finally, there was a few gentlemen at the side of the river, and they're again saying, we're here to help you. And he said, no. And so before you know it, he's going over the rapid. The rapid's so bad, it's almost like Niagara Falls. And he's like, oh my God, why didn't you help me? Son, I threw you a line, you turned it down. Son, I had a branch in the river, you denied it. So help comes in many forms, all right? And we need to learn to discern the ways in which the Lord offers us help and to be of spirit and community to accept that help, and no matter what forms it comes. One of the gentlemen and I were talking earlier, as male caregivers, sometimes remember old John Wayne notion? Yeah, partners, I've got this, I can handle it myself. I don't need nobody. No, get away from me. I'm a strong man. I don't need no help. But the reality is we do. Because the other reality, which we're going to talk about, is that if we don't take care of ourselves by getting help, our health is going to decline. Our physical, mental, spiritual, biopsychosocial health is going to, all right? So we need to do that. So these are the things we're going to talk about real quick. So here's the distinction. Dementia is an umbrella term. Dementia is like somebody saying, I got cancer. Well, what kind of cancer you got? I got breast cancer, testicular cancer, what have you. What about heart disease? Yeah, I got heart disease. Well, what kind of heart disease? I have arrhythmia, I have tachycardia, I have arterial defibrillation, whatever. So Alzheimer's is a brain disease which is a specific form of dementia. It is the most common form of dementia. 80% of cases are dementia. 80% of dementia cases are Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's impacts caregivers both at home and at work, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. And more than 80% of caregivers provided at home are delivered by family members, and that care oftentimes is unpaid care, and we're going to talk about that. Over half of employed caregivers report having to go in late, take time off, or quit work altogether. And for those of us that are hourly employees, if we don't work, we don't get paid. So it's a major strain economically. I was a salaried employee when I worked at Georgetown University. My wife, at the age of 54, was diagnosed with early onset dementia. And unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 62. And when I had her in daycare, it was always interesting. They had just built a new condo next to the daycare center. And every once in a while, as they were building that new condo, they'd clip the electric line. And I just dropped, my late wife's name was Bernita. I just dropped Bernita off at 7:30. I'm at work, settling down at 9:30. Daycare program will call me and say, Mr. Smith, they cut the line from the condo. Can you come get your wife? Because we got to close the center. Oh, man. So I had to take the day off. I live in Montgomery County. Mr. Smith, school is closed today. We follow Montgomery County school system. you can't bring your wife into daycare. So I had to take time off. So, it impacts us in many different ways. So again, dementia is an umbrella term, and there's various types: Lewy bodies, frontal temporal lobe, vascular. Vascular is when, because we as people of color unfortunately struggle with things like high blood pressure, diabetes, all those are vascular related, and that all impacts our brains, and our brains, the arteries start to close up, and we don't think because our brains are getting impacted. So just a quick overview. Now, what I just said earlier, the progressive brain disease, which affects memory, thinking, and other cognitive and bodily functions, is not a normal part of the aging process. Now, I know sometimes, again, in communities of color, we're like, oh, that's just old timers' disease. You just getting old, girl. You don't worry about that. That's just senility. There are folks that live into their 80s and 90s, and God bless them, in excess of 100, that are absolutely perfectly fine. Matter of fact, Bernita was named after her aunt Bernita. And up until she's now 99 years old. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, Aunt Bernita came down with dementia. But before then, Aunt Bernita in her 90s would call me and say, Michael, you forgot to call me and tell me so-and-so and so-and-so. Michael, what's happening with this? I said, oh, Aunt Bernita, I'm so sorry. So, she was sharp as a tack. So don't ever think that Alzheimer's and dementia is a normal part of the aging process. It is a neurodegenerative brain disease that, while there is no cure, can have the symptoms treated. And there is hope on the horizon, as First Lady said, because there's drugs like Leqembi that can extend by 24% somebody's functioning. So that gives you more time to enjoy life. That gives you more time to plan financially, legally, and for one's care. Quickly overview, age is the greatest risk factor. So the older we get, the greater chance, conceivably, that we're going to get Alzheimer's. Family history is a known risk factor. So again, with my late wife, Bernita, her mom was diagnosed at about 83 with dementia. So whether or not that was a factor, less than 5% of folks have true genetics is another risk factor, but less than 5%. There's something called deterministic genes, and if you got a deterministic gene, that means more than likely than not, you're headed for Alzheimer's or dementia. If there's a risk gene, there's a probability, but not necessarily, okay? There's two types I talked about. Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, and women are at an increased risk for developing Alzheimer's. And let's talk about that. For Hispanics, it's 1.5 times more likely. Oh, sorry about that. And the reason being, and for us African Americans, it's 2 times more likely than the general population. Why is that? Sometimes we don't have access to health care. Sometimes when we do have access to health care, the physician may say, oh, for women in their middle age, oh, you're just going through menopause. That's what it is. Oh, you drink just a little too much. That's why your memory's getting a little foggy. Come back and see me another time. So the doctor blows us off sometimes. We've got to be in the worst scenario health-wise before we get treated. The other thing, again, in our own communities, we kind of deny what's going on. No. Mama, ain't nothing wrong with her, But, she went for a walk and she got lost. She knows how to make the best peach cobbler, and it was all messed up. She put a purse in the microwave. It's like, but no, there's nothing wrong, but there's something going on. Real quick, women, because you all live longer than us, you're at greater risk, unfortunately. Okay? Just want to talk about quickly the types. So there's something called asymptomatic. Research has shown that folks that may have dementia or Alzheimer's, they may have it anywhere from 5 to 10 years out, but are asymptomatic. To the degree that on occasion Bernita would switch jobs. She was with her last job, she was director, both of us are social workers, by the way. Bernita was director of admissions and financial aid for Catholic University School of Social Work. And for a minute, she would come home and say, I think I'm going to get fired because I admitted a student when I was not supposed to. And the dean said, Bernita, you gave out a $1,000 scholarship. You're supposed to give out a $10,000 scholarship. Something's going on with you. So something was happening. But before then, we didn't see anything going on. Then there's something called mild cognitive impairment, where you may have some issues with recalling names, remembering things, how to do things sequentially, problem solve, but it's very mild. Then there's dementia due to Alzheimer's, and there's different types. The mild, again, you might forget certain things, you might forget people's names, you might forget how to say a particular word. It might take you a while. You might get a little lost. In the mild stage, that's what goes on. In the moderate stage, it's now affecting more what's called activities of daily living. Somebody might not bathe themselves for a week or two. Somebody might not indeed know how to feed themselves. They truly are getting lost, or they're doing something that's real dangerous. You know, the daughter comes from out of town and comes in and it's like, Mom, why the house smell like that? Oh my God, you haven't dumped the trash in a month. It's awful in here. What's going on? That sort of thing. And then the severe. Severe is when it has spread to the point that it is affecting activities of daily living. In the case of Bernita, as it got severe for her, it got to the point she couldn't communicate anymore. She basically could point to something. She couldn't dress herself. She was incontinent. Luckily, thank God, we didn't have to deal with issues of what's called wandering or sundowning. And that's when people, as the day goes on, they either get a little bit more active or a little bit more aggressive, or they're out there, they walk out the house and you don't know where they are. So just want to quickly talk about that and be cognizant of the fact that no two individuals experience the symptoms and progression of Alzheimer's disease in the same way. So don't do comparative things. Well, my dad had Alzheimer's and, A, B, C, D. My mom has Alzheimer's. Oh, God, your father's much better than my mama. But the reality is people deal with the disease in different ways. It's going to affect them, given their own health, given a whole bunch of both medical and psychological and biopsychosocial factors. And while symptoms worsen over time, people progress through the stages at different rates as their abilities change. Okay, so somebody might be at the moderate stage, somebody might quickly get to the severe stage. So let's just be aware of that real quick. Barriers. So let's talk about this. In our own culture, there's stigma, there's cultural differences, awareness and understanding, and the ability to obtain a diagnosis, manage a disease, access to care, so on and so forth. These disparities reach beyond clinical care to include uneven representation of Black, Hispanic, and Asian in Alzheimer's research. I know we've all heard of Henrietta Lacks, right? We've all heard of the Tuskegee Airmen. We're all very concerned. No, and particularly, again, us African-American men, sometimes we don't take care of our health. I've got a good buddy of mine now. He went down to Louisiana for a trip and came back, and his legs were all swollen, and his son had to take him off the train, take him to the hospital. Like, you got arrhythmia, you got high blood pressure, and he's like, I'm in perfect health. And we call him KB. It's like, KB, no, you're not. You're really struggling here. The other thing that happens is that, again, healthcare folks, they're waiting for us to speak up. Ms. Moore is going to talk about advocacy in a minute. But we need to get ourselves involved in clinical trials and clinical research early on. These days, unlike with Ms. Lacks, they took cells from her cervix and used them to benefit, diabetes, a whole bunch of other illnesses that we now have cures for, came out of Ms. Lacks' genes. And I understand earlier this year, whatever biopharmaceutical company, they finally settled with her family, thank God. So get involved, and we'll talk about clinical trials momentarily. We do trial matches through the Alzheimer's Association free. And there's some that are non-medical, and there's some that are medical. Quickly, there was a special report that came out, and that was talking about how in 2020, COVID, during the pandemic, there was social justice movements, and again, how populations of color were majorly impacted. These populations were disproportionately affected by environmental, societal, and economic impact of the pandemic. Because, again, we had to be the frontline folks going out there to work and what have you. And so, again, we end up getting impacted health-wise, socially, financially, that sort of thing. Some quick data points. 55% of African Americans think that the significant loss of cognitive abilities or memory is a natural part of the aging process. And again, it is not. If you see a loved one, a family member, a church member that is struggling, say something, do something. As a perfect example, my mom, who's 90, her dearest friend, Mrs. McDonald, is 95. And earlier in the year, she said, Lil, let's go to church. I don't feel good. Lil, I called you the other day. No, you didn't. Lil, why don't you come down to the community center? And Mrs. McDonald literally lives across the street from the community center. Where's the community center? So my mom knew something was up, and so she called her daughter and said, Andrea, there's something wrong with your mom. No, there isn't. Mom's just tired. And eventually they got Mrs. McDonald to a gerontologist, and they determined that indeed, unfortunately, Mrs. McDonald has dementia. So do something, say something. We got to get folk in for treatment. To the First Lady's point, there's hope. But you can't deal with hope until we start the process of looking at what's going on to get that treatment going. Just quickly, because I want to get it conversation with Ms. Morris. While African Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as white people, their increased risk does not lead to getting increased attention from doctors who might recommend lifestyle changes or prescribe drugs to slow the progression of the disease in its earliest stages. Rather, African Americans are not diagnosed until the disease has progressed further. So like I said, sometimes, it's something else. So we as family members, we ourselves have to be advocates. Know about the fact that there's things like gerontologists, neurologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, the specialists that beyond our internists or family practitioners might do further assessment to get at the bottom of what's going on. Because the other thing that happens sometimes, it could be somebody's had a stroke. It could be that somebody has not taken their diabetic medicine the way they need to, and so they're in kind of a diabetic situation, and all that can mimic some cognitive issues, both in terms of thinking and memory, okay? And beyond race, societal determinants of health, such as possession or lack of health insurance, economic status, quality of education, and environment play a critical role in the vulnerability of black people when it comes to Alzheimer's research. So we need to be aware of that too. Making sure we have access to the best resources, making sure we're supporting each other and getting access to those best researchers. Quick study that came out this year from the association's international conference, researchers found the highest prevalence of Alzheimer's in the east and southeastern regions of the United States. And I was shocked by this statistic. For counties with a population of 10,000 or more individuals over the age of 65, they estimate that the highest Alzheimer's prevalence rates are in Miami-Dade County, Florida, Baltimore, Bronx County, oh my goodness, right here in Prince George's County, 16.1%. We've got an older population. Sometimes we don't have good access to health care. The basic takeaway from that study was that, like here at St. Stephen's, education is power. The more we know, the more we can say, you know what? I'm going to go talk to my doctor, my internist. I'm going to press my internist to maybe get me to a specialist that's going to do some further assessment. Don't just ask me how's my blood pressure and this, that. How is my cognitive functioning? Do I need a mini status exam? Do I need an MRI? So on and so forth. So that's the takeaway from that study. The other implications, we need to ensure more culturally sensitive health support. So the healthcare providers we go to, do they understand us as people of color? Okay. What do you know? Are you culturally sensitive? Do you have cultural competence when it comes to dealing with me as an African American person? Yeah, I'm in pain. No, I'm not aching majorly, but I am in pain, and you're going to do something about this pain, right? You're not just going to shoo me off and say, go on here, take some aspirin and call me tomorrow, okay? More caregiver training, and thank God for Miss Morris and Hands of Hope. Because again, we don't have to do that John Wayne thing and go it alone. We need resources. We need support. And we're going to talk with Ms. Morris about that more in a moment. And a greater need for a larger workforce that is trained in diagnosing, treating, and caring for those living with the disease. So the young man from the congressman's office, making sure we have legislation that increases health care, making sure Medicare is going to be covering things like Leqembi, making sure that research on Alzheimer's is in the state of Maryland when it comes to local, it's in the federal budget when it comes to federal, okay? Real quick, just want to talk about the Alzheimer's and resources through the Alzheimer's. See the back table, we have wonderful ladies there representing the Alzheimer's Association, tons of information. Information is power. So real quick, our mission, Alzheimer's leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all forms of dementia by accelerating research, driving risk reduction, early detection, maximizing quality, care, and support. Our vision, a world without Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, okay? Where do I start? In these slides, we're going to give them to you. There's information here in Prince George's County. So all these resources are available. Aging Disability Services, Department of Social Services, Senior Provider Network, Berlin Umbrella Group, Ms. Morris's group, through the Alzheimer's Association. First Lady and Ms. Jones, I think, mentioned it. The 24/7. You're in the middle of the night, you know, your loved one who has Alzheimer's, other form of dementia, you know, there they are again. Jesus, get back in the bed. I can't sleep. And you're like, I can't sleep, you know. Or I am so angry because I can't believe he said that about me. Or she, you know, my late wife, Bonita, did, and never used a curse word in her life. And at one point I was like, oh my God, woo, where'd that come from? And I kind of took it personally, right? But you don't have to take things personally because it's not them. Now, it's still the essence of them, but that disease is affecting them. And so being able to call somebody and say, can I talk to you for a minute? This is what I'm experiencing. I am so angry. I'm so frustrated. Help. Help. Trained counselors can speak any language. Early stage programs, education programs like what we're doing this morning, trial match. Again, free trial match, non-drug or drug-related, okay? Also, other resources here in the state of Maryland, Maryland Department of Aging, Institutional Support Services, home care options. So, let me sit down and have a conversation with Ms. Morris because she is the woman, the lady of the hour, and I want to make sure we engage Ms. Morris, and then we're going to engage you all, okay? This is a conversation, as everyone said. Okay. Good morning, Ms. Morris.
Good morning, Mike. And good morning, everybody again.
So how did Hands of Hope come to be?
Well, I'm gonna start. Can everybody see me?
Please use a microphone, please.
Is this working? Yes. Okay.
Hello, is it
Yes.
working?
Okay.
Okay.
Because we're streaming live. There's some people online as well.
Okay. First of all, I want to tell you how I got started and how I became a caregiver. I'm originally from Montgomery, Alabama, and I've been here for quite a while. And I'm the only child. My brother died when he was 27. And so it's just me. So many of you probably out there are the only child. And you're dealing with somebody that you love. Am I right? Well, one Sunday morning, I was getting ready for church, and I got a call from my dad. And he said, Pat, something is not right. Mom is not feeling well. She just came out of the hospital. And guess what? The doctor says she has about 4 months to live. And I don't know what to do. I'm calling you because I need help. I said, Dad, will you call the right person? One of the things that we think about in our culture, and all I could think about was, I need to take care of mom. I need to get mom up here. And we need to do something. Because dad is stressed and he doesn't really know. So what did I do? I had never heard of the word caregiver. Many of you probably never heard of the word caregiver, except that all we know is that we're supposed to take care of people. When somebody in the family is sick, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to get on the track and take care of them. And if we don't, we start feeling guilty about what we decide to do. Why are you not taking care of mom? Why are you not doing this? That's okay, because you know why you're not doing something, and the Lord knows why you're not doing something, and he's going to take care of you. So you know what I did? I had 2 sons and my husband sitting back there. And I said, my dad is called, and mom is sick. We got to get her up here. And my 2 boys were in high school. One was in grade school and one was in high school. I said, we're going to be a team, and we're going to bring mom up here, and we're going to see what's going on, and we're going to take care of her. That was the caring in me that was speaking. That's the caring in you that is speaking probably right now in your hearts. So I arranged for mama to come up, and I taught Stephen. Stephen then was a vice principal here in Prince George's County. He's retired now. He had a certain schedule. I was an associate director of Green Door in Washington, D.C., dealing with people with schizophrenia and all kind of mental illnesses. My 2 sons playing basketball and football. So I'm sure you all have children or grandchildren that you have to deal with also along sometimes with the person that you're caregiving for. Am I right? You got all kinds of things going on, right? But I said to myself, we're going to be a team to take care of mom. We're going to take care of mom in the right way. So when I got mama up here, this is what I did. We sat down with mom, the whole team, the 2 boys, and my husband and myself. And we talked about what she might need, and I wasn't sure what she needed, so I had to have myself call the doctors in Montgomery, Alabama. And Dad didn't know all of them, but I did make contact with one. And that doctor told me that mom was very sick with diabetes, and she might be losing her sight. I said, well, she's coming up here. I'll get her evaluated, and we'll see what's going on, and we're going to take care of mom. I was the caregiver. I was the main caregiver. I was the facilitator of the team. So I taught my 2 sons how to give insulin shots. They practiced on an orange, and they learned how to do it. Just in case I didn't get home in time or my husband didn't get home in time, they learned how to do it because they were home like around 2:30, 3:30, and they could take care of grandma until we got home. Steve left early in the morning. He had to be at school like 7:30. I didn't have to be there until 9 o'clock in Washington, D.C. So I had to learn the schedule of my husband all over again, my sons, and myself. Remember, you're not the only one should be doing everything for this loved one. The team approach works. It works. There's somebody in that family who can do something that you can't do. We all have some type of knowledge or expertise that can help as a caregiver. But you might be the facilitator, and that's okay. So we arranged how to do the shot. The boys knew how to do it. Steve gave the shot in the afternoon. I gave it in the morning, and the boys were there to do it if they had to give a shot in the midday. And so when you talk about a team, you know what I want you to say? If you're taking care of someone, because you can't do it all by yourself. Hands of Hope have 107 caregivers. Everybody in this world like is taking care of somebody. I got a call this morning before I came. I got a call last night about caregiving. And I love it because caregivers are angels. This journey is not an easy journey. That's why you need a team. You ask yourself, let me see just who can help me on this team. Everybody's not going to help you. Somebody's going to say, I don't have time, my job, or whatever. You don't worry about that. Don't get in God's way. Don't get in his way, because he's going to let you know who can be on that team. You might only have 2 people on the team, 3 people on the team. It doesn't matter as long as you have a good team. You can go to Pat for medicine, or you can go to June for doctor's appointments. You write down what you need for this particular person that you're taking care of. And you ask that team. And it doesn't have to be a family member, it could be a neighbor. Who has time to take mom to the doctor on Tuesday? Who can come over and give her medicine at such and such time? Everybody on that team is going to have a responsibility to do something. And that's a wonderful thing, because you can, guess what? If you don't have a team, and if you try to do it all by yourself, which we all try to do in our culture, and that is you're going to get sick. Okay? And one thing that Mike said that I just really want to piggyback on, and that is I'm a social worker by profession. So therefore, I do talk to my caregivers. I do sit down. They do call me, say, Pat, I'm having a hard time today. And that team person might do the same thing, and that's okay. That's okay. That's wonderful. Just think you can have a team. You don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to burn yourself out so quickly. All those things. But this is life. My mother used to tell me, because I took care of her for 10 years. I want to get back to that. After I brought her up here, she lived for 10 years. The doctor said she was going to live for 4 months. So I'm telling you, I don't listen to things like that. I just listen to my Lord and Savior, and I listen to my heart and know what I'm thinking. Okay? So, yes.
Can I ask you a question
You
about
sure
that?
can. You sure can.
So you've talked a lot about what I would call informal caregiving, asking neighbors and friends. What about formal caregiving as being a part of that team?
Well, it's very difficult.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask you, how many of you in here are caregivers yourselves and there's nobody from the outside coming in? Okay, at the table back there. Mike just asked me a question. So you all, you know what you are? You're all informal. You're informal caregivers. That means no one else comes in from an agency, am I right? Okay, so you do it all yourself, right? And you don't get any pay, right? There you go. That's an informal caregiver. All of us, and most of us are informal caregivers. I was an informal caregiver. I really didn't know who to call. I didn't know what to do. All I know is that I had my family, my team to help me out. And that's many of us right now. We just don't know, and that's okay. But you can, what Mike just talked about, one thing that I'm going to stress, if I don't stress anything else today, and that is, please ask questions. You're very important people. You're doing a wonderful thing. You're on a wonderful journey. Everybody can't do this. You're angels. You're angels. Do you know that? And I think about all of my caregivers every single morning. I send them a message every single day, 365 days of the year. Before I leave the house, I send a message to them saying something encouraging or something spiritual. And last night, I got a couple of emails, because they always respond. Patricia, what you sent yesterday just touched my heart. I needed it. Because sometimes we feel so alone by ourselves on this journey. So many things happening to us and we can't do a thing about it. It's okay. You wouldn't be on this journey if the Lord didn't think you could make it. The reason I have a cane, and I don't mind sharing it, because it's all true. I'm getting older, but my mind is still good. The Lord is keeping my mind good because he has a purpose for me. My legs are weak. I asked him this morning, I said, and guess what? No, I didn't ask him. I said, dear Lord, thank you for getting me through this event this morning. I'm going to be with Mike and a lot of lovely people. You know my legs are weak. You got it, right? You got my mind. You know my heart. And you know I'm going to speak to some wonderful people. So remember the informal caregiver back there. If you are an informal caregiver, if you don't get any pay, you get yourselves really tired. Your employee probably sometimes does not work with you as well as he or she should. You got to get to work and you got to do all these things. And then the caregiver might call and say, I can't come in today because I'm sick. Then you have to make all those arrangements. I had to do all of that. And then ride into Washington, D.C. And Stephen could not get off work being a vice principal. It was very difficult. And then the boys had games and all that. We did all of it for 10 years. And then my dad got sick. And he got sick at Baltimore Washington Airport. He was getting on the plane going back to Montgomery, and he fell out. Just so happened, a doctor was in line. That was God. See, you know what? When you start worrying, you're getting in God's way. You really are. And I learned that. I didn't always pray this way. I'm being honest. Sometimes I had to learn how to pray a different way. So I was a caregiver for Dad for 3 years. And so I know what caregiving is all about. And I know what your heart feels. And I know when you're tired. And I know when you need to talk to someone. And my caregivers know that they're going to have something spiritual every day for me. And they know also what? They can call 202-997-4073 and talk to Patricia Morris. I'm a therapist by license, along with being a social worker. So when they call and say, Pat, I'm feeling a little down today. I told one of them just this past week, I said, guess what? You called me at the right time too. Because I'm feeling a little lonely too. I'm only human. Let's talk together. Let's get through this day. Because we can't get through this day. You, all of you, can get through each and every day. My mother used to tell me, as long as you live, Pat, because I'm getting older, as long as you live, you're going to get older. And so therefore, you have to know it's okay. It's okay to get older. God's keeping you here for a reason. He loves you. The informal caregivers back there, you sign up for Patricia Morris. So sometimes you can call and just talk to me. And if you have anybody coming in, sign up so you can talk to Patricia Morris. Because just like Michael said, this is a mental thing also. You know, and you can't do it by yourself because guess what? You all need a timeout. You all need a timeout. And you need to say that to yourselves. And Michael talked about something else that I want you to do. Before you go to the doctor with a loved one, and take your loved one to the doctor, I want you to write your questions down. Be ready. One thing, when I was growing up, and I don't know if anybody else's parents did this, Mom used to compliment me for being quiet. I was a good girl. I never did talk out of turn. That's wrong. She didn't know any better, though. She loved me. She just wanted to, you get a whipping if you talked out of turn. You just didn't do those kinds of things. But you need to talk out of turn. You need to have your list. You need to ask questions. And if that doctor doesn't ask questions, you move on to another doctor. You move on. Because Michael says some wonderful things, some true things that we need to be on top of. Let's talk. Let's feel good about ourselves. I don't care how well we were educated. Mom wasn't educated. She went to the 12th grade. She was educated to the 12th grade. And she taught me. She said, Pat, whatever you do, you raise your hand. You write down questions. And you get your questions answered. And know that things are going to work out for you. You're wonderful people. You're angels. You're doing God's will. Don't forget that. Just keep on doing that. And every time there's a challenge for you, you know what you say? Thank you, dear Lord. Thank you for being here for me. I know you didn't put me here for no reason. Thank you for helping me to endure. Thank you for helping me to be strong. I tell him that every day, and sometimes my husband doesn't really always understand my disability. But he's coming around, and then I'm going to sit down on this. I want you all to know that I was sitting at the computer, no symptoms at all, when I had my first stroke. I was just sitting there talking on a board member's call, and I was wondering what happened here. I'm not talking the way I should be talking. And so I said, I gotta go. And I said, okay. So I was home alone. And right now, my husband's in the school system doing some things that are just beautiful. And I told him, I said, don't worry about me being home alone. Don't you worry. God got me. I've already told him I'm here. You know I'm here. So therefore, whatever's going to be, it's going to be. I don't have any control over anything anyway. None of us do except for what we can do and what we can't do. And what we can't do, we get someone to help us, right? That's what we're going to do. So I just want you to know that you're very powerful people. I love you, angels. And now I bet Mike has another question for me.
Sure. So, sometimes caregivers think that being a caregiver, when it comes particularly to dementia and Alzheimer's, is a one and done sort of thing. They think it's a short-term thing, but the reality is, being a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia is a long, long haul. It's a long journey.
That's
and in
right.
that long journey, there's a lot of stress on caregivers. There's a lot of impact on one's own health. How can we as caregivers manage our health, manage the stress? Can you speak to that?
Well, one of the things thank you, Michael. One of the things that we've always been told that we can always go to God in prayer, and that's true. I would never say not to do that. I'd go to him in prayer every day. So continue to do that. But you have to take care of yourselves other ways also. God will do his part, but we have to do our part. We have to do our part.
Yes.
We need to exercise. We need to eat right. We need to have positive people around us. That's really important. I don't care what you're doing in life. Just have positive people around you, whether you're a caregiver or not. Anybody who's talking negative stuff, just shoo them away. Shoo them away because all they're going to do is bring you down. Meditate. Go on vacations. Take many vacations. You don't have to have a lot of money to do things to just take care of yourself. I had a caregiver call me last week and said, Pat, because you gave me a day off, I just went in the car and cried. I just cried, let it all out. And she's taking care of her husband who has dementia. I had another caregiver say, I read a book. I didn't know I needed this so badly. I didn't know I needed this time for myself so badly. We don't know because we're so busy. We're so busy taking care of people. So take care of yourself. Know that you need a time out. Eat correctly, exercise, meditate. Do anything that makes you happy. Life is too short. You know what we do? We don't start thinking about things sometimes about ourselves until we start aging. Think about it. When we start aging, we start thinking about the illnesses. I know I didn't always think about things the way I think about them now. And I think it's important for me to be honest with you. So just remember that. Live every day like it's your last day. Enjoy your day. Take care of yourself. I have a couple of caregivers who are getting sick because they're not listening, but I still love them. I have a couple of caregivers who got to have surgery. You never know. Go to the doctor and come back, dog, I got to have surgery. Something's going on in my stomach or whatever. You need a caregiver. Call Patricia. I will tell you exactly what to say, and I have a caregivers group. Hopefully, they can work with people who need a caregiver. Okay.
So, Pat, can I ask you another question? And after this question, why don't we throw it out to truly have some dialogue and throw it open to the audience? But let me ask you this: you talked about taking care of ourselves and as caregivers. What's this thing about respite care? Can you talk a little bit about respite? Is respite care in the house? Is it taking the loved one to like daycare? Is it what is respite care? What are the forms?
Respite care is just time out. Who here needs a time out? Raise your hand. Everybody needs time out. If you don't need time out, you gonna call me and tell me I'm sick, Pat. I'm sick. I'm gonna say, oh, you didn't take a time out. But you have different types of time out. You have daycare. You can go. You have like emergency respite care, like if you have to have surgery or something, or you have to go out of town with with your family or something, or you want to take a little vacation. Those are some of the things can you relate to that? Does somebody want to take a vacation? And you got to get a caregiver because the caregiver can't do it at the same time that you're going to be off. Have you ever had that experience? Okay. Has anybody here just say to themselves, oh, I can't do this anymore. I need a time out.
Is having a loved one in daycare like respite care too?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So if you can get somebody in daycare, that's great. If you can't get them in daycare, sometimes you can because you don't have the money. Like the informal caregivers over there, they do everything. They don't get paid. And guess what? Those who have former caregivers like come from an agency, they charge you like $20 an hour, $25 an hour, $30 an hour. I don't understand that. That's why our legislators need to understand what caregiving is all about. It's housing, all that is very important. But there are a lot of people in Prince George's County who are caregivers and need help. Yes, Bishop. Will you answer?
Yeah. Why don't we throw it open to some questions?
Real quick, actually, there are about 50 people online
Oh, 50.
that are watching
Good morning.
through the platforms of YouTube, Facebook Live, and our website. And I did tell them if they had questions to put it in the chat.
Okay.
So there is a question from Facebook Live. One person said, should you feel bad if the team decides to put the loved one in a facility because it was overwhelming for everyone?
I think it should. First of all, Bishop, it should be discussed. You should never make a decision. If you have a team, remember this. When you're the facilitator, this is what I used to tell my team, and that is, when we have a major decision to make, we're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss it, and we'll come up with a decision together. So don't feel bad. You just have to discuss it and then come up with a decision. If you're outnumbered, they all want to put that person in nursing home. Then you have to deal with it. However you want to deal with it. Like my people will call me, say, Pat, I need to talk to you about something that's very hard for me to deal with. Can you help me? And I'll just talk. That's one thing I just love about my caregivers.
Put them out.
Oh,
We
sorry.
got folks online. But
Okay.
let me ask you this. When we talk about the online question the bishop posed, when we bring the caregiving team together, that's usually, I guess, other family members, and there is a sense of, I guess, as I mentioned earlier, we're feeling bad. Do we really want to? It feels like you're giving up. We're going to put mama in assisted living or nursing or memory care. But the thing of it is, if the caregiving team, which also includes the healthcare providers, I think that needs to be considered too. And if one is honest with themselves as a primary caregiver, what's your health status? What is your level of psychological, physical, spiritual health? If you've made the good fight and you have depleted yourself, and Lord knows you have done the best you can, in concert with your care team, formal and informal, putting a loved one in assisted living or nursing care is both best for them and both best for you.
Mike, I'd like to comment on that.
Sure.
That happened to me. That really happened to what just Michael just said, and that is, I started getting sick. I started having stomach problems, and I had to talk to my husband and to the boys about the fact that things aren't going so good for me. I'm going to the doctor a lot. I need help. So what I did was, Mom was in the hospital, and I'm going to talk to you about that, and that is, I talked to Mom about it. I said, Pat is getting a little sick. We might have to make a decision about a nursing home. And Mom was always a mild-mannered kind of a person. I don't know what type of person that you're dealing with, but she was so mild-mannered. She said, Pat, whatever you have to do, it'll be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I thought Mom, she was in the hospital then. And I said to myself, Mom was sure different tonight. She's quiet and about everything. But she was always a mild-mannered person anyway. So I said, well, tomorrow when I come back to see you, we'll talk to the doctor about it. And I've already looked at some places. I need to let you know that, Mom. So I'll make sure that the place is good for you. Don't worry, it's going to be okay.
That's great. That's great. Are there other questions, Bishop, online, or can we take a question? Let's do this. Well,
Yeah, there are about 4 or 5 more questions, but we can do both.
I was going to say, can we do online?
Absolutely.
And then we'll
Here.
do it in person now,
Yeah.
sir, or in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you both for your presentations. Earlier in your talk, you talked about a deterministic gene.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have heart disease, and I had several genetic tests before we got to the final diagnosis. When would one seek out information on a deterministic gene when it comes to Alzheimer's or dementia?
I think the first thing you need to do is make sure you are talking with either your primary care physician or your family practitioner. And have that honest conversation to say, I think because I've got a history, I need further testing. Can you refer me to a specialist? Whether, again, that's a geriatrician, a neuropsychologist, a neurologist, so they can make that further assessment. And as they're doing that, is doing actual genetic testing part of that? And, for each of us, doing genetic testing is a true decision of discernment, because if you discover that indeed, I think it's called an APOE 4 or 5. If you roll the dice and you think it's more likely than not, or you roll the dice and it is one of those deterministic, you got it, then you really need to start preparing to get your affairs in order, legally, financially, care, because you're unfortunately on that path to now have that progressive neurodegenerative brain disease. Does that answer your question? Sure. Bishop, we want to go back to another online?
Yes. Someone asked, what do you do when the person that you're caring for becomes mean and angry when you're caring for them?
Take that first, Pat.
It was a young lady up here that said something. Oh, the first lady. Because I was listening to everything she said. First of all, you don't go back and forth with him. You don't argue with him at all. Don't do that. All you're going to do is just make the situation worse. And one of the things that you need to do is talk to your neurologist or your psychiatrist. I don't think psychiatrist, I think neurologist. And that is about the behavior and how you deal with the behavior. Ask the questions. Every stage of dementia, there's some type of behavior. And you need to understand the behavior and how to deal with it. Like there's a person that's in my group that has a very active dementia person. And so I tell her all the time, please, don't go back and forth with them. Don't argue. Don't dispute them. Don't do that at all. All you're going to do is make it worse for yourself and for them. So just ask questions. If you don't know, just ask questions. I ask a lot of questions.
And can I add to that? I think another thing is distract them. In other words, if somebody's getting a little agitated, and they're, oh, but Michael, look, here's some candy. So you want to distract them. Maybe, oh, look outside. Look at the birds. Isn't it a lovely day? Okay? Maybe put on some calming music. Okay? Maybe even put on some sweet gospel music. And then they start, and it's amazing. Music is that part of the brain is one of the last things to go, right? And so if you put on music, maybe the other thing we talk about in Alzheimer's Association, dealing with the 5 senses. In other words, If they love lavender, maybe not only give them some lavender oil, but rub their hands. So you're rubbing them, maybe that calms them down. And you got touch going on. Okay, you're playing their music, and maybe a soft hymn. And that's going to calm them down, because as Ms. Moore said, if you're going to get loud and don't do one of these things. You gotta shut up, be quiet, because now I'm imposing myself on Miss Morris, and immediately she might feel intimidated. She might get angry. You might.
I might even hit him.
That one time that happened with me and Bernita, I was like, Bernita, and she went, Pew! I was like, why'd you do that? So you want to sit down eye level and talk to them sweetly, talk to them gently. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. And you can't figure out sometimes why they're upset. That's right. You've been sitting for a while now. Let's go to the bathroom.
Oh, let's take a walk.
Let's go for a walk. Right. So hopefully those kinds of things will help. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Well, not so much a question, but I wanted to actually speak to the person that was saying that they felt guilty online about putting their loved one in a nursing facility. And I cared for my mother for probably about 12 years. And I tell you, I cried, I felt guilty, I can't do this. And I prayed and cried and prayed and cried. My team was just my brother and myself, and mostly me. But I tell you, when I finally put my mother, of course, I investigated the various facilities, and when I put her in one, she acted like she was at a 5-star hotel. I mean, I was feeling guilty, but she adjusted so well there. She wanted to be around more people. They had some activities there. I watched her flourish more so than when she was just living, when it was just her and myself. So, a lot of times a caregiver, we personalize things. Like you were saying, I remember the first time my mother didn't recognize me. And I got mad because it seems like she could recognize my brother, but she wasn't recognizing me. And, after a while I said, wait, what are you doing? That's part of the disease. Don't get mad because she can't remember your name. But I could see the smile on her face every time I went to visit her. So just wanted to encourage that team that's agonizing. I know it is a difficult thing. You feel like you're betraying that person, and especially if that parent has said to you, don't you ever put me in a nursing home. So now they've thrown an extra level of guilt on you. But seriously, a lot of times, an individual or even an individual team, sometimes we can't give them what a nursing facility can give them. We don't have the facilities. A lot of times we don't have the patients. But just visit them and make sure you're there and present in their life, and it makes a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. You shared some wonderful things there. I really appreciate it.
Do we have another online question? And then, we got... Let's do the online and then in the back.
Okay, all right. One online question was, can you provide some resources for caregivers who are caring for loved ones solely by themselves?
Yes, the best thing to do, Pastor, is to give my telephone number out. I can say that. And she can give me a call, he can give me a call, and I will direct them, okay? That's 202 997-4073. Patricia Mars. Just give me a call. I will direct you.
And I'd like to add, again, the Alzheimer's Association. 24/7, 1-800-272-3900. The other thing here in the Washington area, we have 75 support groups throughout the DMV. And since we've been in COVID, even now after COVID, a lot of our support groups are still virtual. And if you're part, I think Ms. Morris mentioned sandwich generation. If you're part of the sandwich generation, so you're in your 40s, 50s, you've got kids less than 18, and you're dealing with an older adult, that's dual stress. We also have support groups for the sandwich generation. So there are resources, be proactive to the ma'am in the front. When you're looking at assisted living facilities, nursing homes, do that in advance before that loved one declines to the point that they need that. I know at one point with my late wife, Bernita, I realized that I could not take care of her because I had to work. So I did have her in daycare, but it got so bad that I needed a home health care aide. And I went through the agencies, as Ms. Moore said, they're expensive. And I was blessed. The Lord, again, gives us gifts in mysterious ways. Through my sister, I found a young lady who had been a live-in for a woman, and the woman had passed away. And so I hired her. And at first I was like, I will never have some stranger up in my house. And what are they gonna do? Take my stuff, go through I'm at work. But I was blessed because she came in, she took care of Benita, and Mr. Smith, do you wish for me to cook? Now she was of a different culture, and I was like, no. Me and Benita, we don't like that spicy stuff. What's wrong with you, Mr. Smith? You need a little spice in your life. I was like, don't worry. So on Sundays, I would cook all the meals, and she would, heat them up or whatever during the weekday. So be proactive. And when I realized potentially I needed assisted living facility, I went and checked some out. So I had a list. I already kind of knew, okay, this one, they've got good staff to client ratio, it's clean, they got on-site medical care, they got loved ones and activities. I went to one and it was like 20, 30 people on one floor, one of these memory care places. I felt overwhelmed. So I figured maybe a home that only has 6 to 8 residents. And when, unfortunately, it came time to put Bernita in an assisted living home, that's where I put her. And they were wonderful. They had the room, they had pictures from the house, they had decorated it with some of her stuff, and it felt like home for her. And to your point, I felt bad because, again, from the male perspective, again, I wonder if I gave up on her. Although my son was saying to me, Dad, I can see how stressed out you are. I heard you sniffling. I heard you, no, I have a cold. No, Dad, you were crying because I see you overwhelmed. You got to take care of yourself. And so eventually I got to that point and I realized that the assisted living was an extension. And to your point, I would go every week to see her. So, we've got to realize that kind of balance. Okay, we got a question now inside. And Miss Morris, where'd you go? But go ahead. What's the question in the back? Mr. Moore.
I'll let this young lady talk first, okay?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Good. I guess it's morning, afternoon, what have you. My wife had to step out for a second. She'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm Steve Morris, and I'm the co-founder of Hands of Hope. And my question was for my wife, but she had to step out for a minute, so I'm going to still ask the question, answer it myself, because I know what the answer is going to be. Is that okay? Okay. When we talk about respite care, okay, it's very important that as family members, individuals, we need time out to take care of ourselves. Now, with the Hands of Hope organization, we have an aspect where we've partnered with somebody who've given us the ability to help pay for individuals in our group to take that time they need. But unfortunately, people don't do it sometimes. Everybody has an excuse why you can't do something. If you need a couple of hours away from everybody else, we will pay for those hours so you can get out the house. Or if you pay, Tasha, right? If you pay $25 an hour for 4 hours, that's $100. You pay that and we will give you the money to reimburse you. Now, I know I'm a caregiver again. I'm from a family of 6 people. And, 2 boys, 4 girls. My mother, after I took care of her for a couple of years, preferred my sisters. And I understand that. That's not a problem. But now I am a caregiver for my wife. She just told you about the 1 stroke she had. She's had 3. And what keeps her going is Hands of Hope. Every time I turn around, she's on that computer. She's calling people, she's talking to people, and she sounds so nice and sounds so friendly and energetic. And then when she's off that phone, I say, oh, well, something's going on here too. I'm not saying this, those and other things, but I say, I know my wife. And talking about angel, now she's an angel. I'm just the opposite almost. But I just want everybody here and all to know, as caregivers, you have to truly care. You have to be compassionate about what you're doing. Because everybody in your household and your family is not going to work with you. Everybody's not going to help you out, okay? They're not going to do it. And when I took, for those 10 years that I was working with my mother-in-law, do you know how hard or difficult it must have been for her to have her son-in-law help change her? But when you love somebody like I love my wife, and I truly love my mother-in-law, because she act like, you part of the family, and you can do what you have to do to me. But I said, hey, if you don't mind, I don't care either. But, I would just say, but with the respite care, encourage people, get that respite. It's important, okay? The mental health aspect of it. Socially, we all need these things. And I'm going to get off right now because the other young lady go ahead and speak. And as a caregiver, I'm going to check on my wife, see what's going on. I'll be right back.
Okay. Do we have an online question?
Oh, you don't have a question, okay.
Yeah. Do they still have the caregiver conferences, and are they meetings still being held at the senior center? I think that's a Patricia Morris question, I guess.
Right. So when Ms. Morris gets back,
She can answer. Okay. All right.
So back inside. Did we have a question in the back? Okay. So lady over here.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's really, well, it could be a question. I had to be a caregiver to both my parents, and my mother was the first one to need the care, and I moved both of them into my home. And before we did that, my sister and I were talking about maybe putting my mom in an assisted living place. And when we checked out those places, they would only take my mom, they wouldn't take my dad. And, my dad was really upset, crying, and he didn't want to be separated from my mom. So, we made the decision just to move them both into my home and take care of them. But I think that's the kind of thing that people face when they have both parents. And, we couldn't put her in a home because we didn't want to separate my dad from her. So what do people do when they have that kind of a problem?
So I think, again, being able to reach out to whatever resources here in the county to see if there are resources that can help fund, if it's a financial issue. Are you eligible for certain things? I don't know how many folks here are veterans. If you have a veteran family member, the Veterans Administration provides care to those veterans. They have a whole veterans caregiving program. They also will help support the caregiver of that veteran. There may be an opportunity, but again, check with state or local resources in terms of how you might fund that sort of thing to get both loved ones in the same facility. The other thing we don't think about, although unfortunately now it's very expensive, is long-term care insurance. If you had long-term care insurance, I was fortunate in 2006, before all went wrong with Bernita, we had a conversation. We were like, let's do long-term care. And I said, well, I'll get it through Georgetown, but given we had kids in college, we couldn't take care of getting that coverage for both of us. And when I got it for Bernita, luckily it was a certain amount per day, and it took care of her potentially for the rest of her life. Now, after she was diagnosed, when I went back to Georgetown, they were like, sorry, it's too expensive. We don't offer long-term care insurance anymore. Girl I've known since we were in elementary school is an insurance agent. I went to her. I said, does your insurance company do long-term care? You live in the state of Maryland. We don't do that anymore in the state of Maryland. Check with somebody else. They said, well, we offer tier long-term care. Maybe it's 3 years, 5 years, whatever. So check to see if that is a prospect. But if not, what other resources through Medicare, Medicaid, state, so on and so forth? Check your resources in terms of, assisted living, things like that.
Excuse me, Michael,
Yeah.
Michael, right here.
Oh.
Tasha. Hi, just want to let everyone know that we do have a representative in here. I just saw him, Dr. James Dula, Director, Office of Veteran Affairs. So if you do have questions in regards to what was just spoken about, Cassandra, please see him. Yes, anyone that's a veteran. Thank you.
Oh,
You were talking about being proactive, and I know we haven't really discussed this, but I was wondering about when you notice something going wrong, or you see maybe a person is getting dementia and Alzheimer's, what do you suggest regarding maybe taking care of your affairs? Because I found out later on, if you don't have something in place, or you're a joint owner, with my husband and I, we was joint owners on some things. And when he got sick, and I was thinking about myself, okay, something happened to him. I need to make sure that my children are on, certain things. And when I went to the bank, the lady, and I had to give her my papers and everything, but when I went to the bank and I was trying to add my children onto it, the lady said because my husband was a joint owner, I couldn't just do it because he was joint and he couldn't make a decision. So she told me to catch him on a good day for him to sign the papers. So when is a good day
You
that
don't know when it's a good day.
you can catch a person? So to me, it's very important that if you know a person is into Alzheimer's or dementia, if you can get that paperwork or whatever you need done beforehand.
I don't know how to answer a good day, but I do know to say that when you see something happening on signs showing that you have some questions about, you need to jump on that right away with your doctor and get your diagnosis first. You need the diagnosis. That's what I would suggest. If I would see something that's a little strange, like I said, have your pad and pencil ready, get a doctor's appointment, let the person know that you're scheduling the appointment with, that we might be there a little longer today because you have a lot of questions to ask because you see some things changing in your husband. And then when you get that diagnosis, then what the next step is, and that is to take care of your business that you need to take care of.
Well, I already had, he was already diagnosed, but I was trying to get some stuff done on my own before something else come up.
Oh, well, if he's on there, he's gonna have to sign too. That's the way I understand it. I know, and he's not.
They can't sign if they know they're in dementia or
I
whatever.
know.
The banks or whatever
Michael,
won't
do you
let
have
the
any-
person
you have
do
any
it.
suggestions?
So my general thought would be, see if you can find an elder care attorney who would legally, appropriately advise you how best to handle that. And again, I would even advise, if we can, and I'm looking at either Mr. Watson or Ms. Griffith, if the Alzheimer's Association, through our community resource finder, so that would be alz.org/C community R resource F finder. If they can provide a list in your local area of elder care attorneys, I know one of our presentations, and we've got a list sometimes of different elder care attorneys. So you get the most appropriate legal advice how to handle your affairs. Because, as Ms. Morris said, quote unquote, what's a good day? That's hard to determine, hard to predict. The other thing I want to quickly add back to when I mentioned that we have support groups, right here in Camp Springs, the third Tuesday of every month from 2 to 4 p.m., there is a support group. Okay? And I do 2 support groups for the VA. And it's all because, unfortunately, 2/3 of caregiver are women, and most of them are over the age of 65. But a number of things with the support group. One, you realize you are not alone. Sometimes they offer themselves very practical steps. Perfect example, one time, one of the women, back to the question of agitation, she said, my husband's agitated and he's cussing and fussing. He pointing at the wall, get off of me, get off of me. And she was like, fool, there ain't nobody in the room. Shut up. And eventually she said, wait a minute, he was served in Vietnam. He may be having a flashback. So eventually she changed her whole tone. in sharing this, it helped some of the other support group members. She said, "Sweetheart, you're not alone. I'm here to help you. They're not going to hurt you." And she said it in a very loving, caring sort of way. And then we offer resources. We've done some presentations when we had conversations on difficult behaviors. We talked about some tools and techniques. We've brought in one of the social workers from the VA that talked about more about respite care in the VA system and other things. So you don't have to go it alone. And get the appropriate legal advice would be mine.
And
So good morning, everyone.
good morning.
Good morning.
You spoke earlier about being an advocate for health and all of those things. So one of the issues that I'm having is my health insurance, my main health insurance is with Kaiser Permanente. And I have been trying to get from them additional, I guess, diagnosis or whatever for my husband. They diagnosed him about 4 years ago, but we didn't even know. He had another issue. And they kind of dropped the ball. It's like, okay, so now he has dementia, what do I do? So when I contacted his primary, she told me, well, there's medication that can slow it down, but there's no cure for it. So they prescribed the medication. My husband does not take it. He says that it's not an end-all to be-all. So we both in a support group. And the facilitator for that suggested he see a geriatric or neurologist on a regular basis to be monitored to see his progression in the illness. But Kaiser does not have neither of those. So I'm a retired federal employee. Open season is coming. So I'm looking to make a change, I guess, in my health care where we can maybe get that kind of support. Because right now, even the other day, I asked her for a letter because I'm in the process of doing the legal things for my husband. And I needed something that said that from the doctor that said that he has, been diagnosed. And they tried to take me through some hurdles to get through that, but I had already signed to be able, I think it's a form with them you have to fill out to act as a member. So I'd already done that, but the doctor apparently hadn't looked at his file, hadn't seen it because it was still in effect. So one of my concerns is being an advocate for him. And where do I go? Because right now, and they started what they call a memory care clinic that he goes to every 6 months. But that's basically, they had him drawing the clock and doing the words and all that kind of thing. So that's my concern, being an advocate for his health. And I don't know if is there any other maybe health plans that you find that are more, more, I guess, helpful, whatever, as opposed to Kaiser, because the facilitator told me with the Alzheimer's Association that she didn't care for Kaiser because that was a history that she's known of that they've had. And it was fine when we were younger, but as we're getting older and he's dealing with that, it's just not serving our purpose.
Ask you one question. Did you say Kaiser does not have a neurologist?
Oh, I'm sorry, they do, but what she told me, let me back up. So when he was diagnosed, which was like 4 years ago, and so since we've been in the support group, I asked about him seeing a neurologist more frequently because the facilitator for the group said that he should be monitored by a neurologist, where his primary told me that, well, the neurologist is the one that diagnosed him. He doesn't need to see him on a regular basis. So, for me, and particularly with open season coming, November.
So I don't know through Kaiser if they have any kind of patient advocacy office or whatever that might help push that argument and your desire along further. And as you said, it's open enrollment season coming up. So whether or not through whatever federal government agency, if they offer advice on, what's the best healthcare plan, that would be my general thought about maybe how to approach it, both through Kaiser and then looking at other opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to piggyback on that.
And I go every year to the neurologist and I take the test for Alzheimer's because I had a brother and a sister who died not from Alzheimer's but of Alzheimer's, and It was a thing that I was driving and I got lost. And I just decided I was going to go. And well, at first, my primary care doctor did not want me to go. She said, Mrs. Yerberton, you're not 16 anymore, and you don't have to go. But I just got another doctor. And I do go to the neurologist about every year to be tested.
And I thought about that too, because perhaps I need to change another doctor, even another center. I understand that she said doctors are at a shortage. And then one other question, I'm going to try and be brief about it. So you mentioned calling it the 24-hour hotline for Alzheimer's. My husband is at a point where he likes to walk alone. Doesn't want anybody to walk with him. And so I put an air tag on his keys.
Good.
And I monitor him on the phone. So the air tag works pretty good. But he still likes to walk. And when I tell him, if I want to walk with him, no, I don't need anybody to walk with me. Just since I've been here, I have an adult granddaughter that lives with us, and she texts me, he's trying to walk. It's like when I'm not home, is when he wants to get busy going out. So I had an occasion, it was one evening like 7:30. It's getting darker earlier now, but it is dark. So he was real adamant about going out. I said, we too old to be in here fighting, but you're not going out. So he finally settled down. So I called the hotline because I want to know how can I get him from thinking? He tells me, I said, it's not good. You could get lost, but you can too. And so he always has a comeback. And honestly, the air tag, like even this week, he walks. We're in the area. And the air tag had tracked him on St. Barnabas Road because I could see him. Thought he was coming back home, but he made a detour into an apartment complex. So I put the GPS on in the car and went and got him. He was all the way, it's a large complex. And so when I pulled up on him, I said, dear, get in the car. And he's like, well, I was on my way home. Not here, because there's nothing here that's familiar. So my issue, when I called the hotline, someone took my information and said somebody would call me back. I got a phone call the next day. So I don't know, and it was a social worker, but that really didn't help me because I was in the moment then of how do I deal with him trying to walk. I mean, I know it's a form of independence for him because he hasn't drove in about almost a year now, even though he still goes out to my car and try and get in it. His car he totaled from driving, had an accident, didn't know what happened, didn't know where he was. He was missing for about 24 hours. So the air tag for you people, that really works because it does track him. I can see where he is. But as far as the hotline, particularly, maybe I got somebody that day that wasn't ready to talk. But that really wasn't a help for my issue at that moment.
We'll see if they can offer you a care manager. Again, I'll defer to Ms. Griffith or Mr. Watson. If we've got program managers, I don't know if you all can offer any quick advice. And probably this might be our last question because I think we're coming up on the hour. But I'll look to Ms. Jones for. Oh, we can. Okay. Any thoughts, Mr. Watson, Ms. Griffith?
Well, I'll be brief because I want to make sure we get the questions from the audience. In a situation like that, when it comes to wandering, the best thing that we always suggest, whether it's the helpline or us, is just making sure you have that intentional conversation. And to Mrs. Smith's point, it is a difficult conversation. I'm dealing with a family now, a family friend. Their grandmother is in the middle stage of the disease, and she wanders from her house to the driveway, and it's a long, winding road and cars, and it's not any speed bumps. So it's something that I'm actively dealing with. I think the best pathway moving forward is having that conversation, and then you can call us. That's our job as staff and association. So we're here to help. We do care consultations so we can sit down and come up with a plan that definitely does work for you in situations where the helpline doesn't work. But feel free to call me. I'll make sure you get my car before we leave.
Do have another question. What's the difference between, and this is for Mr. Smith, I believe, what's the difference between the risk gene and the deterministic gene?
So again, a deterministic gene means that it's more likely than not that you're going to end up with dementia or Alzheimer's. A risk gene means that you might have the probability. So it's a risk. It's a crap shot, if you will. And again, the only way you're going to figure that out is if you get genetic testing. But again, that's a very personal decision. That's a decision that takes a lot of research, conversation with one's primary health care provider, family members. Do we want to go down that road to get genetic testing to make a final decision and get an answer, if you will? That's the best I could offer in terms of that. Yes.
Actually, I have a response to the young lady sitting next to me. You were talking about your loved one and decisions that needed to make. A couple of things. You can get power of attorney over him. You have that. Well, if you...
Yeah, I had that at that time. My husband has since passed, but I had everything that I needed. But because we were joint owners, because he was not in a state that he could sign the papers, and they would not allow him to, besides telling him he came on a good day. So I had everything. I had all my paperwork in order.
Well, I think if you had power of attorney, they should have allowed that to happen. I think the bank was wrong. One thing about power of attorney is you need the other person's consent. And if they have gotten to the point where they can no longer give consent, you can seek guardianship. Guardianship is a much longer process, and you have to go through the courts. If you live in Prince George's County, or even the state of Maryland, there's a website, and this is for all of you who may be experiencing this. You can go to the Circuit Court for Prince George's County, and they will walk you through the steps that are needed for guardianship, okay? But seeking an elder attorney is also good because that takes the stress off of you. Seeking guardianship is very stressful. And I just wanted to add that. That's all that I had.
And I brought this up to help somebody else because I already been through it. And my question was to make other people aware of it. So they'll maybe, if they're thinking, they're saying, oh, they just got dementia just a little, but it's important to have your paperwork in order.
That's a very good point. And that's why the conversation is so important. Because you can share and you can learn something from other people. A support group is really important. Because, and that's why I love my angels. Because they bring up questions like you do. And we talk about things like this. And I direct them if I can direct them. And I work on it along with them. So thank you for sharing that. And anyone else who shared, I think it's helping a lot of people in here.
Other questions?
I just have a couple of questions. One, what is the earliest sign for a young person to get Alzheimer or dementia? And two, do you need to get checked out by your primary doctor if that child or young person have symptoms of having that sign of Alzheimer and dementia?
So unfortunately, probably 5% of cases are for those less than age 65. So we're seeing more and more folks in their 30s, in their 40s, and their 50s getting Alzheimer's and other dementia. And again, some of that might be related to comorbidity issues in terms of diabetes, hypertension, other medical conditions. If there's any concern one has about their health, I'm more forgetful, or I'm this, that, or the other thing, go see your doctor. And the other reality is, in seeing your doctor, they can rule out, unfortunately, oftentimes when we deal with our healthcare providers, it's always a process of elimination. It could be this, it could be that. So in other words, they may do a mini mental status exam. They may refer you to a neurologist. Or they may do blood work and it comes back and says, you've got diabetes and your glucose level's off the charts, and so that's affecting your cognitive functioning. Or you've got some kind of vascular disease and your arteries are getting clogged. Or again, somebody's using too much stuff to cope with, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and excessive alcohol abuse can also affect one's cognitive functioning. So you can, if we realize that it's another medical condition and get that treated, then we might get back to baseline. We can say, wow, I'm fine now. I don't forget like I used to. It was my diabetes, or it was this, or it was that. Does that answer your question, sir? Is that helpful?
Yeah, that kind of answered the question. But then I also have another question.
Yes, sir.
Is can that also affect if you were like in an accident or something like that?
Great
Yes.
point. Ms. Morris, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say yes. You know, that could affect it. And what Michael just said is so very true. You know why? I thought I was having another stroke. And I went to my primary doctor. And he said exactly what Michael just said. It had to do with my diabetes. You know, so if you get the right diagnosis, that's a good thing. Go to, like I said earlier, write down your concerns. Go to your primary doctor. Your primary doctor, if he's a good or she is a good doctor, they're going to let you know if it's something that we should be concerned about. If it's not something that you should be concerned about, then you can relax a little bit and not be stressed out about something that you don't need to worry about. But talk to your doctor. Tell them about the signs that you have, and then go from there. Okay? Because they will be able to tell you. I was so relieved when I knew that, because I told my husband Stephen, I said, I think I'm having another stroke, and I went to my primary doctor. He said, Pat, no, you're not. It's all to do with your diabetes. Was your A1C was too high, or something was going on, and it wasn't. Thanks to the Lord.
And to your second question real quick, and I know we got a few others. If you've had an accident, an automobile or any other accident, and it has been some form of head trauma or a concussion or a contusion, yes, make sure you bring that up to your healthcare provider and get that assessed, because head trauma can lead to some form of dementia or some form of cognitive compromise. We want to go, yes, Bishop, online?
First, I want to say thank you. This is great to be sitting in this room with all of you all. I'm related to everyone in here. Everyone in here so far has my story. I too am with Kaiser, and the neurologist, my husband's last appointment, asked me why was I making another appointment? What has changed? And that was like 8 months later. So I got that appointment maybe around a year later. So it's not they're not very interested in, once they've been diagnosed, the neurologist kind of keeping in contact with you. You have to be proactive. In my case, it seemed like I have to be proactive. I'm scared. I am. I'm scared. And and I'm not gonna get emotional, but it's the weight of all that I don't know. I think that I have waited too long, and I'm going to be dealing with a guardianship. And this lady sitting next to the lady, Miss Helen, I happen to know her, that because you know these things, that your husband and you and your husband are on so many things together, and when changes start to happen, you really don't just go run and take his name off of everything or your name off of everything, or and then you're afraid maybe that maybe something might happen to me, and I've changed things. So maybe you go too long and you don't do anything. Just even trying to take care of a Pepco bill, if if your name is not on there too, they may not want to give you answers. The other thing that has been discussed in here that I want to get to, because this respite care is everyone says take care of yourself. A few 4 hours, I could use a weekend. I could use a week, just a respite care, just to get away. And the cost, if you're retired and you're a federal worker, you have a halfway decent retirement. The cost, how do you pay for it? How do you qualify for it? So it's these things that are said easily that you just you put them in. You just do these things when I'm experiencing it's not easy. It's scary. So I appreciate you, and that's all I want to say.
I want to ask you a question, sweetheart. What's your name?
My name is Jacqueline.
Jacqueline. Where do you go to get your respite care?
I don't get respite care.
Okay.
I haven't been able to get respite care. What I have been able to do is talk to my son. I have a son that travels. And when he comes I have a son, let me just say that. God, Lord, I have a son that travels around the world, and he takes his vacation once or twice a year, and he'll come home a week or so, and he'll say, Mom, this is your time. I'm taking care of that. I have that. Other than that, I pay $30 an hour for anyone to stay with my husband, and I do that weekly and have been doing it for maybe the last 2 years. So that's what I do, because we have to pay for everything.
Yes, and Jacqueline, sounds like, let's talk after this, okay? I have a respite program. So let's talk and see whether or not you can really get some benefit from Hands of Hope.
This is, what are some lifestyle changes that we can consider to either prevent or slow the progression of Alzheimer's?
So we at the Alzheimer's Association have a program called Healthy Living for Brain and Body. And we often talk about 4 quadrants. 1, physical, exercise, walking, aerobics, taking care of ourselves. 2, diet. There's 2 diets that we talk about. The DASH diet that deals with hypertension, reducing salt intake, and the Mediterranean diet. All of that basically, at one point before Bernita got sick, I used to love my collard greens and kale and turnip greens with so much fat back. Woo! But Bernita said, whoa. That's not good for our health, sweetheart. I'm going to put some sauteed onion and this, that. So in all seriousness, leafy greens, cut back on the fat, eat healthy. 3rd quadrant, cognitive. Cognitive stimulation, formal education, Bible study here at St. Stephen's, activities, keeping our brains. They even say the more education you have, continuing education, learning something new, it helps helps with what's called cognitive plasticity, okay, and cognitive reserve, okay? And then finally, social. We saw during the pandemic that we had 30 to 40% increase in the number of cases of Alzheimer's and dementia because people are depressed, they're isolated, and depression and stress can also be major risk factors. And you can do a twofer. You can hold yourself accountable and your neighbor accountable as you go for a walk. And as you're going for a walk, you say, oh, Lord, they sold that house. I didn't know they sold that house. So you're talking about stuff, you talk about your neighbor. Oh, I'm sorry, you shouldn't talk about your neighbor. But in all seriousness, you're going out, you're social, you're interacting. So those are the 4 things: eating, exercise, cognitive stimulation, and social. Okay? That's what we recommend through the Alzheimer's Association. Okay?
Another question?
Yes.
Thank you guys for being here. I'm a person who I need to have things like outlined, like lists. So first, October the 31st, this is my team number right here. But on October 31st, I'm taking my dad to be tested for like dementia and Alzheimer's. I'm wondering, will they be able to give me a diagnosis like that day? We would come, okay, so it's like you follow up, you come back in.
I have no idea because I don't know what doctor you're going to. You just be in charge. Okay, you're gonna have your questions ready, okay? Have everything down that you say you're like that kind of a person. I'm sort of like that too. So you just write everything down and you be very persistent. I like what Jacqueline said, you go back and you have everything that you need to talk about and you ask. So now that you've heard all of this about my loved one, what do you think? Can you give me a diagnosis, or will you give me a diagnosis in 2 days or 3 days? I need to know. You're in charge. So when you sit down in that chair and talk to that doctor, you have your list, you're in charge, you know what you're about, you know what you want to know, and that's how you do it, okay?
Okay.
And then the thing you could always do, if you're not a part of Hands of Hope, my telephone number is back there on the table. You can call me. Say, Pat, did I do the right thing? Do you have any more pointers? I will help you with that.
Thank you.
And I do believe the Alzheimer's Association has a flyer that talks about the different things that go on as part of an assessment process. You know, you want to get a medical history, there may be blood work, there may be, again, some form of imaging, MRI, and so it's a comprehensive, because you're going to rule things out. And I think we're going to defer to Ms. Jones.
I want to say one thing before we end, okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Everybody, this is what I want to say to you before we leave today. You are important people. You are angels. You know what stress you out. When you sit down in your chair or near your bed tonight, ask yourselves what is stressing you. If something is stressing you, then you need to go for it. You need to do something about it. Stress will kill you, okay? And one of the things that I've done, that I've learned to do, and that is to ask questions. My legs are weak, but my brain isn't. And the reason that my brain isn't is because I keep up with my caregivers. I love them. I talk to them. I counsel them. And that's all I want to tell you before you leave today. Please take care of yourselves. And if you want to know more about respite, please get the flyer from my husband back there, okay? Love you all. You're wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been 2 hours of well-spent time. Thank you, Patricia Boris, Michael Smith. I would like to ask Elder Gwendolyn Gant to come to give us closing remarks.
Oh, Gwendolyn.
Yes, I would like to ask for everyone in here to please go to the vendors' tables. Please take the information. Please get the information. The hotline number, we have all the information here for you. We do have your emails. We will send the information to you by email. Please talk to the supporters that are in the room, please. And thank you so much for coming out on today.
Amen, amen. I'm going to be very brief. Bishop is beckoning for me to come up front. I was going to stay in the back. Bless God. We certainly bless God for the time that's been spent here today. Certainly a great, great informational session. I'm so honored, that Mercy House put this on. I, too, am a caretaker for my mom. I'm going to say to you, I love taking care of my mom. I love taking care of my mom. I'm honored to take care of my mom. My mom tells me every night, thank you for taking care of me. So no matter what happens in between the day, just remember your loved ones really thank you for taking care of you. Even if they don't say it, my mom is pretty mild-tempered. Of course, she's pretty mild-tempered. She takes she's not sick, she's not on a whole lot of medicine. We may give her a calming pill during the day. I remember when Mom first was diagnosed, and I want to say this to you all, please pay attention to the signs. My mom lives in North Carolina. I'm in Maryland here. And there was a neighborhood young person that would help her do a lot of the things that she needs. Well, we're just glad somebody would help her. She signed everything she had over to that person as she was becoming into this dementia. We got it back, and now today, that family is reaching out to us because he's doing the same thing to his mom, but they wouldn't help us back then. And so just be careful who's in your space when you're going through these things, and pay attention because things happen quickly. But we bless God, we got it back. But bottom line, yes, we certainly bless God for that. We're just grateful. We talked about the different attitudes of people with dementia. Yes, sometimes they do get agitated. I like using positive affirmations. My mom loved it when I say, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job, and that resonates in their brain, that you care about them, and they're trying. She'll say, oh, I didn't understand what you said, and I didn't forget. But the last thing I'll tell you about, my mom always says to me, if you live long enough, you're going to forget some things too. God bless you all. Let's continue to be caretakers to our loved ones.
coming out today. St. Stephen's Baptist Church. Like to join us tomorrow morning, please do. We have an 8 a.m. and an 11 o'clock Sunday service. Thank you, Bishop Twomey, for allowing us to do this today. Thank you.
Can we thank again Miss Tasha Jones, spearheading, of course, she's a community guru. Amen. Always involved. Thank you all for coming. Have a fantastic rest of the day. God bless you.
Bless you again, as always. Love you much.
Good luck to you. If I could ever be a bit further assistance, let me know. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to do a group photo real quick.
Thank you so much for this.
So beautiful. God is good. That's my husband. And he spoke with
Yeah, but anytime I want to,
get my number right Oh, look at you. Oh, my God. I didn't know you were speaking today. Oh, yes. How you doing? Excellent. 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 Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
I think we're all better.
My number is on the paper, but they call me sometimes.
I wrote it on the paper because I'd had it before.
Okay.
Excellent. I used to walk with her and her husband. I used to work for her husband in Stephen Decatur. So I know them. I did not know they were speaking today. I subbed for him after I retired from the phone company. And we used to walk together down there. So I knew her before she had the stroke.
Beautiful.
Yes, it's wonderful. I'm glad.
I'm doing better.
You look wonderful.
Yes.
You look wonderful. Thank you. I heard you on WHUR a couple months ago.
Oh, you did?
You did a fantastic job. Yes.
If you need a time to do it once a week or once a month support, I would love to.
Say it again.
Do a time to anybody that has I put that
Yes.
once a month or something.
Absolutely.
I would love to put on.
Absolutely. So
I would invite you to my 10th anniversary.
wonderful. When is it?
Hands of Hope.
When is it?
It's November the 18th. I'll send you.
Send me the information. Yes.
Save the date.
Yes. Yes. If we can come, we'll come.
Okay.
You're doing a fantastic job. Yes.
Yes.
Everybody can feel your passion. We know this is what you've been called to do.
I believe that. I really believe
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So yeah.
I love you.
I tell you.
I love you too.
Bless you. Talk to Elder Gant because again, we're talking about a support group.
I gave her a caregiver. She said it for years.
Yes, I love it. Beautiful, beautiful. But if you want to do a support thing, a physical one here in the church, or you want to do it online, but we can talk in detail.
Talk to her about it.
Yes.
You want me to talk to her? You talk to her.
It's needed.
Yeah, I would love to.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll take a picture.
Around now, that after
that again. Usually, Director of Family Services.